My name is Mike Nelson. I'm the Vice President of Digital Trust at DigiCert, and really excited to be at HIMSS this week. The work that we're doing in healthcare, I think, is really critical, especially with some of the new regulations that were introduced last year by the Food and Drug Administration. Last year, the FDA got the regulatory authority to deny approval of medical devices that are submitted to go to market if they don't demonstrate the right level of cybersecurity protections. And DigiCert, a lot of the protections, there's security best practices, but they include and involve public key infrastructure and the use of digital certificates to authenticate connections, to sign code, to ensure integrity. And so DigiCert is working with a lot of the medical device manufacturers to help them achieve compliance with the FDA regulations that came out last year. The lead up to the Food and Drug Administration's regulatory authority has been building, and there's been momentum, and the industry has been working to become more secure, I would say, over the last 10 years. Before October of last year, the FDA had guidance for the industry. They encouraged the industry to deploy security best practices, but it was really only that. They didn't have the regulatory stick to be able to go in and drive and mandate that manufacturers were doing this. As of October, though, the FDA now can deny the approval of medical devices that don't meet certain cybersecurity requirements, preventing those insecure devices from going to market. I'm excited about this new regulation because it's going to raise the bar of security for the entire industry. And for those of us in cybersecurity, we know that healthcare is the most targeted industry. And more we're seeing connected medical devices as the entry point for hackers to get into healthcare systems. The WannaCry virus, thousands and thousands of connected medical devices were compromised during WannaCry. And we see more and more of these devices being exploited. And because of that, I think is why the FDA now has been given that authority to regulate the cyber of connected medical devices. So I think the regulations that the FDA has put out, they're encouraging or they're mandating that the industry follow the NIST cybersecurity framework, which I think is a really good framework for implementing and getting started on cybersecurity. However, there's still some aspects of the regulation that I think could be leveled up. The FDA is requiring the submission of software bill of materials to demonstrate that the manufacturers know the software ingredients of the medical devices. One of the things that's really important with software bill of materials is that you have integrity with that document. And so one of the things that's being discussed right now is using a digital signature to sign that document to ensure that it can't be modified so that it can maintain trust from the time of its creation throughout its life cycle. So that's one, and there's a handful of others, but I think the guidance that is in, the language that is in the regulation is really strong, and if manufacturers are following it, it's going to put us in a really good position for those devices to be protected. The FDA regulatory authority has clear guidance in terms of what manufacturers need to be doing. However, the devil is really in the details of how you implement those security practices. For example, it's requiring that manufacturers do code signing. Well, there are secure ways to do code signing, but there are also insecure ways. We see a lot of manufacturers that are distributing signing tokens on USB thumb drives and have no ability to control or audit who's signing and the files that they're signing. And so ensuring that as you're looking at the security best practices and the security approaches that the FDA is requiring, making sure that you're doing those practices in the right way. that you're thinking about secure storage of tokens, that you're thinking about key rotation, that you're thinking about ensuring that your security approaches can scale, making sure that you have centralized visibility and management of your security solutions. Security is only as good as your weakest link, and oftentimes we see manufacturers kind of doing the entry-level approach to security practices instead of making sure that the things that they're putting in place are built with security in mind and scalability. Cryptography is very important in the new regulation with the Food and Drug Administration, and it's required. Cryptography is also under attack right now. Cryptography continually evolves, and you have to strengthen the algorithms to make sure that you're staying ahead of the attackers. A lot of medical devices being manufactured today, you think about large capital equipment like an imaging machine. They'll sit in a hospital for 10 to 15 years. It's our belief that quantum computing is coming. And with the arrival of quantum computing, today's crypto algorithms will be vulnerable to attack and being broken. Because of that, having agility in your cryptography is absolutely critical. And when I talk about agility, what that means is the ability to upgrade the crypto. So NIST right now is developing new algorithms that will be quantum resistant. They'll be strong enough that quantum computers will not be able to crack them. Manufacturers that are building devices today that have longer shelf lives than 5 to 10 years need to make sure they're thinking about crypto agility. How do you update that crypto with a device that's out in the field, maybe on the other side of the world? And it's not just with medical devices. This is a call to action for everybody in the healthcare industry. Healthcare organizations, the payers, and the medical device manufacturers need to think about their crypto assets and make sure that they have the ability to upgrade those and enhance the algorithms when quantum computing arrives so that they can maintain the protections that today's cryptography is providing. So the question is crypto agility enough? And the answer is yes. Crypto agility gives you the ability to update your crypto to meet the standards of today that are strong enough to resist today's attacks. So when quantum computers come, having the ability to update and to renew and rotate your keys and the credentials that you're using is absolutely critical. And the algorithms that are being defined by NIST are quantum resistant. And the experts developing those, DigiCert is involved in that, are making sure that those algorithms will be resistant to quantum computing. And so I have absolute confidence that if your organization has crypto agility, that you will be able to update your crypto to protect your organization, to make sure that you can rest peacefully knowing that you're still secure. The best practices for medical device manufacturers, I think the first has to be knowing the risk of the device and really understanding. The Food and Drug Administration encourages manufacturers not just to think about intended use of the devices, but also unintended. And so organizations, manufacturers need to understand the risks. Once you have that understanding, then you can start looking at security best practices. How do you make sure that the data is protected? How do you make sure that the bad actors are being kept out? How do you make sure that the software running on the device is free from malware and that it has integrity? All of those things, security best practices, those of us that operate in the security space, it's not new. It's not new security approaches that they're asking medical device manufacturers to employ. They're relying on the tried and true security practices that work. And so understanding the risk and then putting in place the right protections to mitigate that risk is the right approach. And then once you do that, I think it's important to call out that the Food and Drug Administration is also saying it's not deploy and forget. Manufacturers need to maintain security, need to be able to continually look at the devices to make sure that they're still secure. And with that, they're requiring that medical device manufacturers have the ability to update devices that are in the field to improve and increase the security of those devices as technology evolves and the threat landscape changes. And so the Food and Drug Administration is not just saying it needs to be secure at the inception, it needs to be secure throughout the device's life cycle. And I think that is also a really important element for manufacturers to think about and how you manage the security of that device throughout its life cycle. If I look at all of the regulations that the FDA is asking for, public key infrastructure is woven through many of them. User authentication, mutual authentication, device identity, code signing, and all of these security approaches utilize public key infrastructure, keys and certificates. And so because of that, I believe that public key infrastructure really is the starting point for achieving compliance with the Food and Drug Administration's regulation. Having the ability to securely manage and control the way that you're deploying and managing certificates is absolutely critical to achieving compliance with the Food and Drug Administration because so many of the practices rely on public key infrastructure. It impacts not just software architecture, but the architecture of devices at large. I would say 5 years ago in healthcare, medical device manufacturers would address cybersecurity when there was a compromise. A device would get hacked and they'd say, hey, go put that out and let's figure out how to incorporate security into that. Today, manufacturers need to think about security from the very beginning in the architecture and the design of the devices. They need to then think about it in the build process and making sure you have integrity with the software. You then need to think about security in the deployment and the ongoing maintenance of devices. The regulation is requiring manufacturers to build security into the DNA of the way they manufacture devices, from the inception until decommissioning of those devices. And so security has to be part of every step. And we're starting to see the organization mature in that, where you're seeing chief product security officers that are managing the entire portfolio of devices in organizations to make sure that they're deploying security from a centralized, controlled, and in a way that maintains the security and integrity of their approaches. Maintaining security of medical devices that are going into healthcare delivery organizations has to be a collaborative approach. And the reason for that is you can imagine a scenario where a manufacturer pushes an update to a device that's being used for a surgery on a patient. The timing of those updates has to be done in a way that's coordinated. Manufacturers can build security into devices. They can have a certificate on a device for Wi-Fi authentication. A healthcare organization can choose not to use that. And so the security and maintaining the security of these devices going into healthcare systems has to be collaborative. And I believe more work needs to be done in that area to ensure that there is tighter collaboration and working together to ensure that those devices going into healthcare systems maintain security.